This isn't one of those feel-good, New Year, New You talks. You've heard those before. They sound powerful. They feel convincing for a moment. And then life stays exactly the same. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you reached the start of a new year thinking, this is it. This is the year I finally change, only to look back months later and realize nothing really moved? Same habits, same comfort, same version of you staring back in the mirror. The scariest part isn't that you failed, it's that you're starting to expect it. You already know the pattern. You set goals when you're emotional, when nothing is required yet, when the future feels clean and full of possibility. But the moment change starts to cost you something, your mind quietly switches sides. Not because you're weak, not because you don't want it badly enough. Your brain isn't built to chase your future. It's built to protect your present, even if your present is disappointing, even if it's slowly draining you. That's why every year begins with motivation and ends with explanations. You don't fail in a dramatic way. You fade. One missed day, one excuse that sounds reasonable, one decision to start again tomorrow, and tomorrow slowly becomes a place you never reach. Here's the part most people never notice. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your mind takes you a little less seriously. At first it argues, then it negotiates. Eventually, it just waits you out. So when you say, I'm going to change this year, your brain doesn't fight you anymore. It already knows how the story usually ends. And that's the dangerous part, because this is how people lose years of their life without ever feeling like they made a choice. So if you're listening to this at the beginning of a new year, this isn't about hype. It's not about motivation. It's about deciding whether this will be another emotional reset, or the moment you become someone who actually follows through. Because this year doesn't need more hope. It needs a different version of you. Every year, there's a lie you tell yourself that sounds harmless. It doesn't feel like self-sabotage. It feels reasonable. It feels mature. The lie is this: I'll do it when things calm down, when I have more time, when I feel ready. And the dangerous part is that none of these sound like excuses. They sound responsible. You tell yourself you're being patient, that you're waiting for the right moment. But what you're really doing is protecting your current life from disruption. Because change doesn't just demand effort. It demands friction. It asks you to wake up earlier than you want, to say no when it would be easier to say yes, to feel incompetent before you feel confident. And your brain hates that phase. So instead of saying, I don't want to be uncomfortable, it dresses the fear up as logic. It tells you, now isn't the best time. Let's plan this properly. Starting later will make it easier. But later never arrives in the way you imagine. Life doesn't slow down. Responsibilities don't disappear. There is no clean, quiet moment where everything finally lines up and gives you permission to begin. That moment exists only in your head. And here's the part that's hard to hear. Each time you delay, you train your brain to associate your goals with avoidance. You don't just postpone action. You weaken trust in yourself. At first, it's subtle. You miss one day and tell yourself it doesn't matter. You skip one session and promise you'll make up for it. You break the rule just this once. But your mind is always paying attention. It learns that your promises are flexible, that your goals are optional, that comfort usually wins if it pushes back just a little. Over time, the lie evolves. You stop saying, I'll start tomorrow, and start saying, this just isn't who I am. And that's how the lie finishes its work. Not by stopping you once, but by slowly convincing you that the person you wanted to become was never realistic to begin with. That's why this lie is so quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't panic. It waits. It waits for you to be tired. It waits for you to be busy. It waits for another year to pass. And the worst part is, every year it succeeds, it gets easier to believe the next one will be different. And once you start noticing that lie, something else becomes impossible to ignore. It's not just that you delay. It's why you feel so powerful at the beginning and so empty a few weeks later. Because the problem was never your intentions. It was what you were relying on to carry you forward. This is where most people get trapped. They call it motivation. They celebrate it. They wait for it. But motivation is the most unreliable partner you could build a future with. At the start of the year, motivation feels clean. There's no resistance yet, no proof required. You make plans while sitting comfortably. You imagine success without friction, and your brain rewards you with excitement for things you haven't earned. That feeling is addictive. It feels like progress, even though nothing has changed. But motivation only shows up when the cost is theoretical. The moment action becomes inconvenient, motivation disappears. Not slowly, instantly. That's why New Year motivation collapses the second routine kicks in. The first early morning feels heroic. The third feels annoying. By the 10th, it feels pointless. And that's where people get confused. They think something is wrong with them. They think they lost motivation. The truth is harsher. Motivation was never meant to last. It's an emotion. And emotions exist to react, not to commit. Your old self knows this. That's why it doesn't panic when you feel inspired in January. It waits. It knows that once life interrupts, motivation will hand control right back. This is why gyms empty out, why notebooks stay half-written, why goals turn into vague regrets by spring. Not because people changed their minds, but because they built their plans on a feeling, and feelings always betray you when discipline is required. Here's the darker part. Motivation gives you permission to delay real work. It convinces you that thinking, planning, and visualizing are the same as doing. So you feel accomplished without having to feel uncomfortable. Your brain gets the reward without paying the price. And once that happens, starting for real feels even harder. Because now you're not just facing effort, you're facing the gap between who you imagined you'd be and what you actually did. So motivation becomes the excuse for waiting. I'll start when I feel it again. When I get back into the right mindset. When the energy returns. But the energy only comes after movement, not before. And this is the trap. New Year motivation doesn't fail because you're weak. It fails because it teaches you to rely on something that disappears the moment your life pushes back. So if motivation can't carry you, and planning doesn't save you, there's only one thing left to look at: who you believe you are. Because beneath every habit, every excuse, every broken promise, there's an identity holding it all in place. This is the shift most people never make. They try to change their behavior without touching the story they tell themselves. They say, "I'm trying to be more disciplined. I'm working on my focus. I'm getting better." And those phrases sound positive. But listen closely. Trying means optional. Working on it means not yet. Getting better means someday. Your brain hears those words and relaxes. There's no urgency, no standard to live up to. So when things get uncomfortable, you fall back to who you already believe you are. someone who skips when tired, someone who negotiates, someone who lets things slide. Identity always wins. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-image. That's why real change feels so threatening. It's not a habit that scares you. It's the idea of becoming someone new. Because a new identity doesn't allow old excuses. If you see yourself as someone who wakes up early, you don't debate the alarm. You move. If you see yourself as someone who keeps promises to himself, quitting feels foreign. That's not motivation. That's alignment. But here's the part no one prepares you for. Identity change feels fake at first. It feels forced, unnatural, like you're pretending. And most people stop right there, thinking they're lying to themselves. But that discomfort is proof you're doing it right. Your brain is resisting because it's losing control. It wants evidence before it believes. But evidence only comes after action. So you act first, clumsily, imperfectly. And with every small action, the identity hardens, not through affirmations, not through visualization, through repetition. Miss once, and the old identity whispers, "See, this is who you really are." Show up again anyway, and something shifts. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start saying, "This is what I do." That's the identity shift. And it's the reason some people change their lives quietly, while others stay stuck, loudly talking about change forever. And once you start changing how you see yourself, something uncomfortable becomes clear. It's not just your mindset that's been working against you. It's what surrounds you. Because even the strongest identity will crack if it's placed in the wrong environment. This is where most people lose momentum without realizing why. They blame themselves for lacking discipline, when in reality they're fighting a system designed to pull them backward. Your environment is always shaping your behavior, silently, consistently, without asking for permission. Look at a normal day. Your phone is within reach the moment you wake up. Notifications compete for your attention before your feet hit the floor. Endless content rewards distraction with instant relief. You say you want focus, but your environment rewards avoidance. You say you want discipline, but your surroundings make comfort the default option. And your brain follows rewards every time. This is why willpower feels unreliable. Willpower is a finite resource. Your environment is not. If the easiest option is distraction, you will eventually choose distraction. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is efficient. It conserves energy. It avoids friction. So when people say, you just need more self-control, they're missing the real problem. Self-control fails when it has to fight your surroundings all day. And here's the darker truth. Your environment doesn't just influence you, it trains you. It teaches you what's normal, what's acceptable, what gets rewarded. If everyone around you procrastinates, your delay feels justified. If your routine makes effort inconvenient, quitting feels logical. Over time, your standards quietly lower. Not all at once. Just enough that you stop noticing. That's how people stay stuck for years without feeling trapped. They don't need chains. They have routines. So real change doesn't start with more discipline. It starts with removal. Remove triggers. Remove easy escapes. Remove environments that reward the person you're trying to stop being. Because once your environment supports your identity, discipline becomes less about force and more about momentum. And momentum, once it builds, is hard to stop. And once your environment stops pulling you backward, something else starts to surface. Resistance. Not from the world, but from within. Because when change becomes real, it doesn't just threaten your comfort, it threatens your relationships. This is the question almost no one wants to ask themselves. Who are you protecting by staying the same? Because staying where you are doesn't just feel easier, it feels loyal. You've played a role for a long time. The reliable one, the funny one, the one who doesn't take things too seriously. And when you start changing, that role gets disrupted. People notice, not always out loud, but in small reactions. The jokes change, the invitations slow down, the energy feels different, and suddenly, staying the same feels like the price of belonging. So you tell yourself, it's not the right time, that you don't want to become that person, that you value balance. But look closer. Sometimes what you call balance is just fear of standing alone, because growth creates distance, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, emotional one. You start waking up earlier while others sleep in. You care about things others dismiss. Your priorities stop lining up, and that gap feels uncomfortable. So you soften yourself. You skip the work when others want company. You delay progress to keep the peace. You shrink your ambition just enough to stay familiar. This is where most people stall. Not because they can't change, but because changing would mean disappointing someone. And here's the part that hurts. The people you're protecting by staying the same often don't even notice the sacrifice you're making. They just enjoy that nothing is changing. Meanwhile, you're paying for it with quiet resentment and a growing sense that you're living below your potential. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about telling the truth with your actions. Because every time you choose comfort over growth, you're not just staying loyal to others. You're betraying the version of you that trusted you to follow through. And that version doesn't forget. Once you confront who you're protecting by staying the same, everything becomes clearer. It's no longer about vague goals or wishful thinking. It's about choices every single day. And here's the simple rule that decides your entire year. You choose between short-term comfort or long-term respect for yourself. That's it. That's the line that separates the people who quietly succeed from the ones who watch life pass by with excuses in their hands. It sounds easy, almost obvious. But the truth is ruthless. Because every day, multiple times a day, you're faced with this choice. Do you scroll through social media instead of working on your craft? Do you hit snooze instead of honoring your commitments? Do you allow yourself to rationalize, delay, and negotiate? Or do you stand up, do the work, and prove to yourself that you can? And here's the part no one talks about. It's not one decision that breaks you. It's hundreds, thousands of tiny ones. The ones no one notices, but that quietly shape your identity. Every skipped workout, every postponed task, every moment you choose comfort, teaches your brain that your promises to yourself are optional. And that's why most people don't fail overnight. They fail slowly, silently, consistently. Until a year passes, then another, and suddenly they wonder where their life went. But here's the kicker. The same rule works in reverse. Every time you choose the harder, longer, uncomfortable path, even just a little, you reinforce a new identity. You build trust with yourself. You prove that your word matters. You slowly shift who you are from someone who tries to someone who follows through. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's almost invisible until the results start to accumulate. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need motivation for this rule. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to act consistently, in alignment with your new identity every day, in the small moments that nobody else sees. Because when you do, comfort no longer dictates your choices. Your environment no longer controls your behavior. Your old self no longer whispers excuses in your ear. You start to move through life guided by momentum and respect for the person you're becoming. And that's when the year stops being just another set of empty promises. It becomes the year you actually fulfill them. Once you understand that every day is a choice between comfort and long-term respect, the path forward becomes simple, but brutal. Stop promising. Start proving. That's the distinction almost everyone misses. Promises are cheap. They sound good in your head. They feel like progress. They let you imagine the future while staying comfortably stagnant. But proving is uncomfortable. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't care if you feel motivated. It doesn't reward excuses. If you truly want this year to be different, you have to stop announcing what you plan to do and start taking action that forces the change into reality. Most people think they need a grand gesture. They think they need motivation, inspiration, or recognition. They imagine telling someone, "I'm going to achieve this," and believe the words themselves have power. But here's the truth. No one notices what you intend. No one rewards ideas. Only results count. So start small. Start silently. Start in ways that nobody else sees. Wake up early, even when you want to stay in bed. Work when it's inconvenient. Do the thing you know you're avoiding. The first few days feel forced, awkward, even painful. But that's proof you're on the right track. Your brain resists because it's losing control. The old version of you is fighting for comfort. And every time you show up anyway, you're winning. Quietly, invisibly, irreversibly. This is where real momentum starts. Not with motivation. Not with planning. Not with promises. Momentum starts with proving yourself. Every day, in small, consistent, relentless actions that reinforce the identity you're trying to become. The difference between talking and proving is enormous. One lets you drift through the year, hoping for change. The other guarantees it. And the beautiful part, once you start proving, the world starts to catch up. The results appear. Your confidence grows. Your habits solidify. Your identity hardens. No applause needed. No validation required. The only witness that matters is yourself. And the only judgment that counts is whether you follow through. So stop negotiating. Stop hoping. Stop planning for a perfect moment. Act. Do. Prove. Because a year full of promises is just another year lost. A year full of proof becomes the year you finally earn what you've been promising yourself all along. Once you stop promising and start proving, something strange begins to happen. It doesn't hit like a lightning bolt. It doesn't feel dramatic. It sneaks up on you quietly until one day you notice it. This is the moment everything changes. It's subtle at first. You wake up and realize you no longer debate with yourself about the things you know you should do. The excuses that used to feel reasonable. Just one more day. I'll start tomorrow. I'm too tired. Have started to lose their power. And that's when the shift occurs. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start saying, "This is what I do." Your actions no longer depend on motivation, energy, or inspiration. They become automatic. They become identity. The first time it happens, it feels strange, uncomfortable, like you're moving through a life that doesn't belong to you yet. But the more you act, the more natural it becomes. Your routines begin to define you. Your choices reinforce who you are becoming. And the biggest surprise? Your old self, the one full of doubt, hesitation, and comfort-seeking, doesn't disappear. It watches silently. It whispers. It tries to lure you back. But by now, momentum has become stronger than fear. Once this momentum takes hold, your life becomes almost unstoppable. Not because you're lucky, not because circumstances finally align, but because you've built a version of yourself that refuses to quit. From this point forward, your actions dictate your reality. Your words and intentions no longer matter. Only what you do counts. And that is the difference between a year that passes quietly and a year that transforms everything.